Hello, Book Club, hosted by Heather Skinner. We are here with Mary R. Woldering. She is our book club book of the month author that you voted in for September 2021. I'm so excited to talk to you about your book, Mary. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
My daughter, because she loves to ask a question every month. So would you mind holding up your book that we're reading this month? It's the Children of Stone series, book 1, Voices.
Okay, can you see it? Yeah, there we got the whole thing pretty much.
Oh, perfect. Yes, that's a great view of it. And Gemma has a lot of questions about your beautiful cover. She is so intrigued by it. So it's going to be a surprise to me which one she chooses now because she had so many. She's so excited. Gemma, would you like to come ask your question?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask all the questions.
You are? Oh my gosh, I know you're so excited. It's a gorgeous cover.
Okay, so the first one that I asked, why are the stars so up high on top and then that one close to the building is so lower?
Why is it low? Well, that's part of the artistic design that I wanted. One star was important in the theme of the book because that was the one that got everybody's attention.
Ooh.
And they knew that it was not an ordinary star. So actually what you're seeing is the star actually becomes that little bunch of at the bottom.
Ooh.
The same thing, but it's kind of like you're seeing two different times. This is when it is going through the sky, and this is when it has landed.
Ooh, that's
or fallen.
That's great.
Okay.
I like that.
Second question.
Question 2.
So, why is there no people hiking on that trail?
Oh,
why are there no people hiking? Well, actually, there was in the original drawing that I made for my son, who's a grown man. He's got a boy and a girl. He's got a girl who's 3 and a little boy who's 1.5. That's Sarah and Ivan. When I was originally drawing those for him as what I wanted on my cover, I did have a little person walking on that hill. It just got kind of funny to have that there because what I wanted to show was how empty that is. It's supposed to be the wilderness. So it's supposed to be barren and empty and you can't see anything. And they didn't have any street lights out there. All you had was the moon and the stars. And if you were lucky and hadn't gone far, maybe you had a torch. But there were no lights and it can get pretty dark out there. So I didn't really want to show people walking because there weren't any people except our one character.
Oh, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Did you have another?
That's what he sees.
So it's like his point of view. That's cool.
Yeah, I just thought of it. Is there anything else that creates the building to keep it supportive and staying?
Oh, so like the future part?
Yeah.
On the bottom, you're asking if anything else goes into the star to make it what it is later?
Yeah, like to stay together. I'm asking.
Well, that's kind of the outside of I guess some people would want to call it a spaceship, and so that's the way the surface of it looks. And if I was going to be reading that part in the chapter, what it really looked like, but we couldn't do it on that cover, was it looked like a zillion rainbows moving around in that pattern.
Pretty.
I really love rainbows.
Aww.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool. Those were great questions. Yeah. I really love that her son helps her with her covers and is so such a big part behind the scenes because we get to work together on the book club. And I think that's so special. We get to work together. I
Uh-huh.
love that she works with her son too to make the drawings and the covers. I think that's fantastic. I definitely want to talk more about that later on too, because I just think that's so cool. There's something so special about that family support and working together.
It's so supportive.
It's cool. Maybe Gemma will do that for me one day. I'm in the
Oh,
process of writing
yeah.
a book, and she got so excited about it. She actually drew me some pictures. She wanted to show you because she was so proud of them. And then it's like your son does that for you for the covers. So she did bring them.
So here's her synesthesia.
Yeah, well, it might be hard to see because we wrote it on a scrap paper. But my main character has something called synesthesia, which I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like where the senses cross.
Uh-huh.
So like, you know, they hear music and then it makes them see color because of the
Uh-huh.
So when I was
Okay.
talking about it, she drew me this picture of what she envisioned the synesthesia. And she
Uh-huh. I think I remember reading that you had this character.
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned it.
This picture.
Oh, I didn't realize we can see the back of these pages so well. And this was her creation of one of my last scenes.
It's when the girl got scratched by that stone.
No spoilers.
Oh. Yeah, let me be surprised, okay?
I know. I love that you got so excited. But I just love that whole like family connection and just, you know, we share it with the book club and everything. And I just really love it with you and your son working together on it. I think it's so special.
Well, actually, it was my daughter that got me started on this back in 2010 because she remembered me telling them kind of like a really watered down version of it when they were growing up. Because I started this story when I was in college with some friends. And I put it away because it was time for me to be a mommy and raise my kids. I didn't have time to write. So she remembered that and said, "Are you ever going to publish those books?" So I started sending her the files. And she said, "These are really good." But I couldn't publish it at that point because that was 2,500 pages. And I went, and plus I'd changed a whole lot of things that were in it. Okay, bye, Gemma.
Right, Gemma, come say thank you. That was awesome. Those were some really cool answers and questions.
I am going to stay again.
To say thank you?
Thank you.
Thank you. We're reading your book this month. What is there a book that you're going to be reading? Because I know you've been reading along with us in the book club.
Uh-huh.
So is there one you're reading now this month while we're reading your book?
I was catching up on some short stories, not from the club though. But what I might actually do is take a break from some of the reading and get on to writing the 5th book in this series. The deadline is looming. You know, I had wanted to have the first draft done by the end of the year. I'd actually wanted to be published by the end of the year, but it looks like it's the first draft is going to be finished by the end of the year so that we could have the whole thing and then me move on to other writing projects about mid next year.
Oh, fantastic. That must be the hardest part though, right? Like finishing off a series that you worked so long.
It's terrible because I published book 4 in 2018 and I am stuck. You know, it's like, oh, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap up. So that'll be exciting.
Right. I mean, book 4 was actually supposed to be the end of the series, but there were too many unanswered questions. And then there were some really interesting action scenes that I had wanted to put in there. So I said, okay, let's do a 5th book. Oh. And now I have somebody in the background going, shall we do a 6th? And I'm going, no, we're not going to do a 6th. We'll do spinoffs, maybe novellas, but no, this has to end someday. You know?
I love that this will give you some more time to write too. That's great.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing.
So if you have been so busy, is there a show that you're currently binge watching at all as well?
I don't even watch TV anymore. When we lived in our former house, we tried cable and we tried Dish, and we didn't have the extras. We just had the basics, and I realized that we were just paying too much for stuff we didn't even look at. I think I miss HGTV the most because even though they're fake, I like looking at the home repair stuff. you know.
Fixer Upper. Oh my gosh.
Pardon me?
The show Fixer Upper, one of my favorites.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think we did when we first got streaming service. We have that here, but both of us are just way too busy to even sit down and think about it. And I don't really like to watch TV by myself. You know, I could, but I always I'm the kind of person that if I'm seeing something, I like to discuss it. And so we did watch Fringe when we first got it. We watched all 5 seasons. And I've been thinking that I might, if there's time in November, I hear that Wheel of Time is coming on, if I can get that on my streaming service without paying extra. Because see, we watch TV so little that I'm going, why should I pay for these little add-ons? Just try to find something I like.
Yeah.
But Wheel of Time seems to have, and my son-in-law has told me that seems to have a vibe very close to what I'm writing. So if people have read Wheel of Time, and some people have compared my story to Game of Thrones, which I haven't read or seen. So I don't know. I'm kind of in that area, kind of an epic adventure romance, but with a lot of spirituality in it, which is why I'm calling it visionary fiction. But the more I think about it, it should be historical fantasy with visionary fiction as the secondary genre rather than the primary one, because it is mostly adventure and it is mostly what you would call historical fantasy with romance in it. It's just got a very heavy otherworldly and spiritual vibe to it in some places.
I find it really interesting too that you like to watch what you write, because I know sometimes authors will break that up, like I write this, but I watch this or read this, and it's separate sometimes. So I like that yours is a continuation, that you like being in those worlds.
I have watched crime dramas, but I guess I've always had the same kind of thing, some paranormal thing going on. I was when I was very young, I watched all the original Twilight Zones. My dad liked those. And so much of those have actually what I would call visionary fiction message to them. They were listed as sci-fi, but they really weren't all science, There were things there were a lot of psychological dramas and interactions with people and how people's minds work. And I think that series probably inspired my writing almost more than anything. That and Edgar Allan Poe. So
I love that. Let's see. What is your favorite social media platform?
Facebook. That's about the only one I have time for.
It's a lot. Yeah, I love Facebook too.
I know a lot of people are getting away from it, but you can get yourself in trouble on any social platform. I just have to learn that, some people I don't talk to. And it's not that I'm angry, it's just that they don't know how to behave when they get on my site.
It's a lot of friends. Yeah, a lot of sites have like people who patrol for them just to make sure everything's going smoothly, because you never know who's posting and what context they're coming from, and it is a lot just to keep up with one social media platform. I don't know how people do it where they're on all of them.
I don't either. I mean, they say you're supposed to be wide, like no Twitter. Now my daughter does Twitter, so basically what I do is if I have a post, I'll link it to Twitter and then she'll share it. But she's busy with her own thing on Twitter. She does the J-rock, J-pop stuff, and her own crafting and things like that. ADHD studies, stuff like that. That's
really interesting. That's really cool. Let's see. Is there a place you want to travel to one day?
Probably Egypt, if it ever gets safe. Actually, I'd like to travel back in time. I don't know if I really want to go to modern Egypt. Time travel, I'm there. I want to see if I was right.
That's a really cool answer to the question. I love that. You want to go back to the time you were writing in?
Absolutely.
I love that. Love it.
If
After
I could be safe. I don't think I'd like to come up with any of the injuries or illnesses that couldn't be treated back then.
That's true. Right now I'm at chapter 5 of your book, and already I can see, like, the cultural and time differences already from
I'm
what
going to have to see exactly what is in that part.
what part I'm at so far.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right. I know where you are now. Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
after writing, is there a next favorite art form that you like to create with?
Well, I actually have a bachelor's degree in fine arts painting, but I haven't done it in forever. So it's kind of like, oh, I used to play the flute 50 years ago. I can't do a note now, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I was in painting. I did do paintings and stuff like that. I got a degree in it, but that's when my minor, when I was in school, was art history. And then I realized that that was what I really wanted to do, although that's a careerless degree. It's one of, that's what they used to call it. You want fries with that degree. Because you could study and study and study and still not get a job. But I went ahead and got a master's in it also, just in case. So, and I didn't do anything with it except hang them on my wall. And they helped me with the research and the writing.
Oh, well,
Because,
that's good then.
yeah.
That's the hard part. Art is so great, but it is sometimes hard to fit it into a box of a career, like with certain parts.
I think we're frozen again.
Oh no. Okay, you didn't freeze on my screen, so I apologize. I just heard it's raining really hard where I am, so I apologize if it.
Yep, it says your internet connection is unstable, is what it's telling me.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not seeing it on my screen, so I do apologize for that.
Yeah, we had our rain earlier. I'm in Ohio, so we had ours in the middle of the night.
Oh, we've got it now. It came. It was gloomy and it's here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have the first story you ever wrote? Is this the first story you ever wrote?
Oh, I have the, well, I have it up here, I have it up here. But I don't have it on paper. I think it went away. I have the ideas. I've actually kind of turned some of the ideas into short stories. I wrote my very first ever romance short story last year for Kaleidoscope 3. And it dealt with one of the first stories I ever wrote, but I changed it a lot and made it more modern. And really just kind of took the locale. It ended up with just mostly the locale and how the characters looked, but everything else almost changed. And then I did write one that was really creepy, eerie, as for what had happened, because it came from a dream. Like all my stories come from dreams. I guess you're going to get into that question later. And this one was about, I think I was a junior in high school or something like that. No, sophomore. And we had put on the production of Billy Budd. And I had a crush on the guy who was the lead. But out of that came a love of the Napoleonic Wars and ocean and sea battles and stuff like that, and sailing ships. And so I wrote one where I think Mutiny on the Bounty had just been filmed way back then. So this shows exactly how old I am. This is like the mid 60s or something. And they kept the model of the ship that was the HMS Bounty. And I wrote a story about young people who took that boat on a cruise and it sank. And guess what? In the early 2000s, the model of the HMS Bounty they used on the film was taken out by young people and lost in a hurricane.
Wow.
The real one. And so I'm going, oh, wow, look at that. I predicted the future, you know. But, that's how things happen to me, you know.
That's really interesting. Oh my gosh, I love that.
I had everybody live in mine. I think they lost some people back in that other one. I don't know how many, I forgot. I'd have to look it up. But it was just, there it was. I was going, oh, my kids and I actually, when they were younger, it had come as part of the Tall Ships program up to Cleveland, and we walked around on the thing too.
Wow.
And but that's another whole thing that I like. I don't just like ancient Egypt. I like the sea. Moby Dick was actually my first favorite story, and the first book I actually read. I say read because it was an antique thing that had these old color plates. I think it must have been from the 1930s, and it was beat up by the time I got my hands on it. I think I still have fragments of it somewhere, but I was basically teaching myself to read. I would go through it in second grade and look at the words I knew and pester my mother about what the ones I didn't know. So I always tell everybody, when I was 7, I read Moby Dick. Well, sort of.
I think that's fantastic. Like even with my daughter now, she's looking back at the older like Dick and Jane books. And I love your idea of what you did, like going through a book that looked interesting to you and picking out the words that you knew. That's really fantastic, actually. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So my last quick question was, I love that your family is such a big part of your writing career and journey. What do you guys like to do when you're not working on your book? What's your favorite like family fun activity together?
Right now, Zoom, because nobody lives near me. Son's in California, daughter's in Rhode Island. So, we get together when we can. We talk on the phone. When we're together, my daughter and her family, we end up hiking a lot because her husband has a lot of allergies and I have cats. So the last time they visited, we did, even though it was March, we did a lot of outdoor hiking. It was fairly warm, except for one day it snowed. And so we have pictures, and I don't get to see my son that often, but the other thing, because he's in California, and he's always working on something, and so I usually just end up seeing I haven't actually met the youngest one because of the COVID shutdowns. So I haven't seen Ivan except on video, but we're hoping that gets over with in Thanksgiving or something. I think we're going to try, unless things get lots worse, to have a little bit of a reunion here and have both kids and their kids all get together. Our house is big enough now. Where we used to live was not big enough, but it's big enough. We upsized instead of downsized because we wanted to have a place where everybody could actually get together and we could be at one big table. Our other house, we couldn't even have dinner together unless we went to a restaurant. It was just that cramped. It was okay for kids growing up, but just not okay for company to come over.
That makes sense. Well, congratulations. And I am going to keep my fingers crossed for you that everything works out. You'll have that in-person get together, because I know it's hard with COVID and just seeing people over videos sometimes, your family, like it's hard. So I'm going to be thinking of you and keeping my fingers crossed for you for that.
You'll see the photos. I'll post them.
And I will click the love button when I see them. So I'm going to move on. We've got a lot of awesome questions that came in from our book club members.
Yeah, I saw those.
Yes, I'm excited. We've got Bonnie Yepson Weinman. She's fantastic in our group. I love seeing her discussions. She wanted to know, do you write a detailed plot line before you start your books? And do your characters ever cause you to move away from it all?
Okay, the first part of the answer I will say is no. I am a pantser. it has gotten me in big trouble. That's one reason I have my son edit, because he can storyboard like you would not believe. And we almost have come to verbal blows on the phone when I was getting book 4 ready. He was going, "You can't do that. It couldn't happen there," you know. And we expect it's going to be a lot of screaming matches when he finally gets book 5. As a matter of fact, he actually didn't like my outline that I had for book 5 because he said it was too sad. And he said that no, people are not going to put up with that. I had almost a Hamlet type ending, you know. And he says, "You can't carry people for 5 books and then kill everybody but one," you know. And I'm going, all right. So it's not too big of a teaser because I didn't do that, and I'm not going to. But there had been that thought. Okay. So the second part, as far as the characters running away with me, I have to tell you about Ramakai. That's the one that is in this one. Actually became a character, you know, that, well, how can I put this without people thinking that I am totally crazy? I do believe in spirits and ghosts. Okay, I'll just put it out there. And when I was in college, friends and I became aware of a particular spirit whose name was Ramakai. And I started, you know, we did some cartoons and some drawings and stuff like that. We played with the Ouija board, and all that is written about in this book. Okay. And I noticed when I was starting to write Children of Stone that my main characters were getting upstaged. You know, like it's almost sort of like a separate, if you can imagine, energy was saying, "No, write this, you know, you want to write this way, you know." And so I did. And I also wrote a poem, which was really interesting. I always post it around Halloween. It's called Howl. And it kind of tells the after story of this character. So yeah, the characters will sometimes run away with it. My son actually adopted one of the characters, and is kind of running away with that character, and making that character much more important than it was in my original story. But I've also had experience doing what they call lit RPG, which is it's a role-playing game. I do that with Mark McQuillan and Davina Purnell and Mara Reitzma, who does some of my covers. And it's basically where you start a story and other people add their characters and their story. So I was already used to that kind of shenanigan. So when other people tell me, "Okay, well, why don't you do this?" I'll go, can I do that? Oh yeah, sure. Let's go for it. You know, so you end up with a group written story at the end. Some of the characters are real, some of them aren't. And some of them are just plain crazy. Okay.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love all of the answers to those questions. That was amazing. And it makes me even more intrigued to see how you end up ending the series now too, like knowing where you were coming from and your feelings with it. It's really cool that your son gives you that editing advice too, because that sounds a lot to me like even with traditional publishers, we were talking about this recently on another a previous interview. There's so many people behind the scenes checking for line edits, making sure that everything's consistent. So it's really great that he's giving you that genuine feedback, even as a family member, because sometimes family members, they love you and they just say, "Oh yeah, that's great," and they don't give like an opinion they really have. So I think that's awesome that he's helping you, like, you know, with that behind the scenes, and that you take that feedback, and that, you know.
Yeah, opened that can of worms, because I asked him, he volunteered to cover, but then I also asked him if he could help me, if he could look over some of my manuscripts about 3 or 4 books ago. And he said, sure. And he said, well, let me look up and see how to format. And so he started formatting them and does a very good job. But while he was formatting, he also suddenly was editing. And he's a writer too. He's actually been published,
Oh, that's fantastic.
but a short story. We were both in the same anthology, which is called, if you hold on a second, I'll get it.
Okay, that's perfect. Oh, and it gives us the nice view of your Children of Stone and Other Stories poster. I love it.
Yeah. Both my son and I are in this one. It's called Dreamtime Damsels and Fatal Femmes. We each have a short story in there. And see, what I wanted is I knew he really had the hobby of writing. And my biggest problem with the writing was I didn't really get to do this as any kind of profession until I retired. I didn't have time. And here he is in his early 30s with a family. And I said, well, maybe you should start learning some of this now so you can grow with the technology. Because my biggest problem is I don't know the technology or how to market.
It's tough. It's an ever-changing world too. Like I feel like every day is a new learning curve with the technology out there.
I think podcasts is going to be, because people got used to that with Zoom, it's going to be probably the way you market now. It used to be takeovers, but I'm seeing those kind of fade into the background, and podcasts ending up being more. Let me get some water here. I'm starting to frog up here.
No problem. That is a good point about podcasts, because I know I listened to an increased amount recently, and I mean there's so many out there now. And it's a cool way to do it because you can do your laundry and your dishes, and you can multitask with it and still hear everything going on. So it is a really cool way to put things out there now. So I agree.
Okay.
So we've got another question from Josephine writes in, who we just featured last month with Balance and Retribution.
I know I owe her a review. Yeah. And I told her I owed it to her too.
You're busy and she knows that. And I think you gave her stars already, right? Which is a big part of it too. So that's a start. So she wanted to know, which I love that she asked this, where you got your inspiration from. And I know you've already touched on it. But I did also want to kind of connect her question with something you mentioned last month during one of our discussions. I forget which one, when we were discussing her book. You said you thought that maybe you and her
were frozen
by this. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's not freezing on my end, so I apologize. It must be the weather again. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, I am. It's just still giving me that little note that says it's unstable.
Oh no. Okay, I hope the connection lasts for us.
Oh, I do too.
And I can always bring us back up. So, I was hoping to kind of connect this. Last month during one of the discussions about balance and retribution, there's a character she has in her book named Roland. And you had mentioned in the discussion that you were thinking maybe you and her had the same kind of character research in your book for a character versus her Roland. Ah, okay. So I was.
There he is.
I love it. Oh, I wonder if you guys were researching. So, did you have any more? Because I know you did kind of touch on your inspiration, like you were saying, things come from dreams. And I mean, you've got kind of a good collection of where things come from. Is there anything else that inspired you for this?
Well, I think what one of the things I was talking with one of the visionary fiction people who I hope watches this. A lot of it came, I think it started out as dreams and stories my girlfriend in college and I told each other. And she was actually the basis for the Anna story, because that's kind of about her childhood with some of my childhood thrown in there. Kind of mixed us up, but it was mostly her. And then we noticed I think we were Star Trek fans, and then when Star Wars came out, we looked at that and we saw the character of Darth Vader, and I said, that character kind of reminds me of something. And we both started thinking about that, but then what I kept hearing resonate in my mind was Jedi. You know, I says, what is, and so I started looking it up and found that there was actually a real Jedi. And a lot of it had references. I was going, where did George Lucas get his ideas from? And then I went to talk to, we listened to a speech by Joseph Campbell. He's long gone now, but he was the hero's journey person. And we talked to him about it, and he was saying that he and George Lucas talked about it, and Star Wars did all this, and Star Wars this, and Star Wars that. And so I said, but I want to know where these words came from, because sometimes a word will just pop into my mind. I'm sure that does it for many writers. Originally, the story was set in ancient Greece, and I kept getting the thought that it should go back earlier to Egypt. And I don't know anything about Egypt, and I really still don't know the myths as well as I should. But I started looking at this, and I stumbled across something that totally changed the direction of the book and made it into historical fantasy. And I think I did because I was looking up names, because I had names for my characters, and I was wanting to give them more realism. So I was going, what can I call these people? My original antagonist name was Horsafet. And so I looked it up, and there is a Horjatef. And I said, okay, we're close. Let me see what that's about. And then I stumbled across this thing called the Westcar Papyrus, which is one of the earlier forms of fiction. It was an oral tradition. It got written down about 1500 BC, something like that, and rewritten. And it had basically stories of when the gods walked as gifts of the gods who walked as men. And so I looked it up, and it said that Horjatef was the son of King Khufu. That was the one that made the big pyramid, the biggest of the three. And there was some immediate drama with that, because some scholars didn't know what became of him, but he did pop up again 3 kings later as a powerful scholar. And so I went, all right, what can I, and he had assistants and other things like that. So I suddenly started thinking, I can use this. Because if you hear the story that's about him, it's called Jedi the Magician is the name of the story. And it's about this fat little old scholar that everybody's forgotten. I'm saying, does that sound like Yoda to you? You know, and and so I'm going, I think George Lucas was working overtime in this manuscript here. So I read some more, and I said, well, I'll put him in my story. And so all of a sudden I realized that I actually had done almost a rewrite of an old legend and grafted it onto the ideas that I had. So I've almost got like a story within a story in the books.
Wow, those connections are so fascinating. Oh my God, I love it. That's amazing. Oh, wow. I can't wait to keep reading. Like, I'm on chapter 5, and the more I hear, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to read more. That's what I'll be doing after the interview. So we have 2 questions from Carrie Weston, which is awesome too, because I met Carrie Weston virtually during one of your author takeovers, actually. And then we ended up friending each other after, because we were commenting.
Yeah, I know, I remember that.
Which was awesome. So I love that she's like, I think she's reading along with us this month, and she's got 2 questions for you. She added one today. Are you into spiritualism, as there seems to be a big emphasis on gods and deities and spirits?
I guess it depends on what you call spiritualism. I would say that I have my own brand. I was raised Catholic. I'm still Catholic. Although I'm probably not the, let's say, what you usually think, but it's kind of almost like a basis. But then I also had a very heavy road trip in the 70s through the occult and spiritualism, where I learned a lot of the past life regressions and things like that. And a lot of my stories came out of that too. So what I actually believe, I would not say I'm into it that much anymore, because you can't prove any of that stuff. You can only imagine, okay, maybe, there's a chance, so I'm open to it, I'll say, more than into it. So, as I said before, I do sense spirits from time to time. So, either I'm hallucinating or it's real. You pick. I guess it depends on what somebody's background is what they're going to assume about that.
I like like you said, you have the openness about it, like the way, that allows you to kind of collect experiences, kind of to make your fictional works and kind of have basis behind it and inspiration. Mm-hmm. I think that's
I'm really interested in cultures. And I think that's the thing that keeps me fascinated, is how a particular religious belief influenced art and culture. So that takes me a full circle back to the whole art historical background.
That's really cool. And I feel like her other question kind of connects in a way. She wanted to know, do you believe in your title that there are voices within crystals? I like the conversation that this could lead to. Like, I don't know exactly if she's asking, like, do you believe kind of in stones and crystals having powers, or literally voices in them, like it literally says in your title. So I'm curious.
I'll show you this. There it is.
Ooh, yeah. If you want to hold it just a little bit closer to get a little.
Okay. Very nice. Is it focusing?
It's not focused yet. Maybe just back a little bit, because that looks gorgeous. I'd love to get a good view of it. Gosh, that is so pretty.
That's mine. Okay. And my friend and I, who helped me with these stories, were in Mexico studying one summer, and studying art one summer. And we were into crystals and stones and stuff like that for meditation. And we would put them on our third eye. Think about that. And how that ended up. And so he said, we had used little red glass beads for a long time. And I said, we need some better stones. And so we were going through this box in Mexico, and all of a sudden I went, there's one. It didn't feel different. It seemed like it almost had a temperature, and it was sort of like, "Oh, I'm here." It wasn't a real voice, but it sort of had a nuance or an energy. And I think different stones can. I know that there's a lot of science involved with crystals and things like that. Radio, for instance, a lot of the computer stuff, things like that, came out of a lot of that technology. So yeah, they do have a voice. I think they can also be a gateway, kind of a spiritual gateway. I don't know if they have powers. I think they can focus. Like if somebody concentrated on their own energy, they could send it through a stone. But when you keep reading, you will realize, as the character Mirai does, that they aren't just stones. They're something else entirely. They look like stones, but they aren't. So do ones from Earth have that signature or that voice? When I get to the reading, you'll notice what Jedi says about it.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I was really interested to hear your answer to that question. I love stones. I don't know as much about crystals. I think stones are just so exciting.
Like actually more into the stones also. I was looking to see if I had any other good ones, but no, they're not. They're not in the special box. They're in the regular box. So I'll not do that right now.
That's okay. Yeah, I love stones. Like the earrings that I typically wear are actually shungite. I don't know if you've heard
Mm-hmm.
of that. I am obsessed with shungite. So it's supposed to like absorb EMF rays, so your body can.
Oh, okay.
And then I
Yeah, I
guess
don't really know that much about them, except that I've collected pretty rocks and stones all my life, and both my kids have. So,
that's true. My daughter
um,
has a huge rock collection, and she'll set aside some to paint, and some she just loves to like sort by texture and just loves to have them. There's something special about stones and rocks. Like I think it's different for every person, maybe, but even just having a rock collection as a kid, I think there's some kind of connection with somebody on every level, which I think is really neat to
yeah,
connect.
I think that so in a way they do have a voice and they do speak. They just don't sound like people usually.
Unless it's your book, which is awesome. So then we've got another question from Jenna. I want to make sure I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Jenna Newell Hyatt, I believe. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. It's a beautiful name. She wants to know, the book has so much amazing historical detail. How long did you spend doing research?
Well, considering the idea for the story first came up in 1970, and there was a hiatus in there from about 1985 to about 2010, that's 15 years in there. So basically, you're talking about 35 years of, but it's basically whenever I found something interesting that I could work with, there it was. I just kind of wrote it down or drew a picture or something like that. Let me see if I can find an interesting picture
Oh,
that okay.
I really love that you kept notes along the way too. Like you didn't just kind of give up on it and say, I have this idea, but I don't have time to work on it. I'm so happy to hear that you did still keep notes and drawings and that led you to be able to put it all together when you were ready.
Okay, pardon me.
I'm sorry.
While I was ruffling pages. What?
Okay. I was saying, I love that you didn't give up on your ideas over the years, that you kept the notes and the drawings and you kept them there for when you were ready to put them all together. I really, really love that.
Yeah. Well, I had to get ready. I mean, well, the other thing too is there's maturity now. Yeah, this was the cartoon I was going to show. My girlfriend did this cartoon, which is kind of a hoot.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh. That's from one of the laters. That's the Ramakai character, and that's one who becomes Jera.
Oh, that is so cool.
That's the kind of stuff that we had as our notes earlier. So I think that's more questions.
Yes, definitely. I would love to suggest though, like you have between what your son sent me that I can't wait to share in the book club group, like the behind the scenes picture of working on your cover. And then just the notes and the pictures you have. I would love to see you put out some kind of book like of just the stuff leading up to your series. I feel like that is also interesting and you have such really
cool my stuff leading up, like how I went about it or what?
Drawings. Yeah, like just even your drawings and just everything that you collected along the way. Like as I'm seeing them all, they're just so fascinating. I would love to see that as like a collection, just putting it out there.
I've listed a few of them before, but I might I mean that was, oh gosh, maybe 6 months or so ago, I posted it on the Visionary Fiction post, but I could probably find that or re-find it or something like that. When my blog was active, my blog has basically died right now. Nobody was really looking at it anyway, and I don't have time for it. So I just write everything on my Facebook page now.
Which is perfect. But I think if you find one, like I think Beth Worsdale said this last month too. Like if you find one that you can pour so much into and that's where your time can go, I think people will resonate with it. And she said that and I totally agree. Like as long as you find the one, if you can't space her out over all of the blogging and social media, like if you're putting into one, people will find you there and it'll be more authentic and you'll have that time to do that
Yeah,
one.
I mean, I'm told I really should have something that isn't Facebook or Twitter for people that are just not really into social media, but I'm kind of maybe, you know.
That's true, to have that other where people can find you. That makes sense.
Mhm.
If you have been talking about it along the way a little bit, mentioning visionary fiction. And I would love for you to go on and tell us a little bit more in your own words about what visionary fiction is. I know you
Yeah.
talk about it a lot and it's not out there as much, but the more I hear you talk about visionary fiction, the more I feel like maybe even other books fit into that category and it's just not known.
Right. Yeah, I think it's actually becoming, I mean, I've had people actually tell me there is no such thing as visionary fiction. I mean, I actually had a friend, I was in Barnes and Noble, and she was going, "You really need to stop with this visionary fiction stuff." And I said, "Oh, yeah." She says, "Well, point to me the visionary fiction section over here in this bookstore." There isn't one. Okay. Um, but that's because visionary fiction is kind of a big umbrella that covers a whole lot of other genres. And I think it's more of a style than a genre. It's what I've come to realize, because you can have sci-fi, you can have romance, you can have erotica, you can have fantasy, dark fantasy, YA, you can have all these, you can have mystery or crime drama. If it has a paranormal, well, I won't, a paranormal is almost getting to be a hype too, because usually that's ghosts, vampires, werewolves, shifters, etc. But if you have something that has a spiritual journey, then it can be called visionary fiction. The best example I ever heard of visionary fiction was everybody has heard of the story, The Christmas Carol. Okay. That is a prime example of visionary fiction, although it wasn't set out, because it's the story of what happens to Scrooge when he meets up with the spirits. Do we really care where it is? I mean, yeah, you've got Tiny Tim and all those people and stuff like that, but the story is about Scrooge's journey from being a real jerk to being a good humanitarian. So that's what's visionary about it. And so that's the best I can do. And visionary fiction can go in two directions. Some people say, well, it has to be about the uplifting, of a person from darkness into light. But I think it could also be about the fall, like somebody who had it together and through a series of events became more corrupt, because things didn't go their way. Basically angels can fall.
Right. Oh, that's
And
interesting.
demons can redeem themselves too. So I noticed a lot of that with Josephine's. We seem to have a lot of demons that were redeeming themselves here.
Yeah. What would you like to see for the future of visionary fiction? Like, do you want it to just be more known about? Like, what do you
Yeah, I
think?
think so. For people to know what it is, to know whether or not they fit. I mean, sometimes I'm not sure I do. Because as I said, for a while I was touting myself as being visionary fiction, but the more visionary fiction I read, I realized that probably should be a secondary genre. And so I'm calling it, my main genre now is historical fantasy or mythological fantasy,
Ooh, I
things
like.
like that, because it seems like I'm always coming back to myths and things like that, and cultures and fantasy from different lands.
And that actually leads me to my next question. How hard was it combining the history and the fantasy into one story?
It just sort of flowed. Well, and there's another little story too. Another character you'll meet is called Usharkaf. And that was another thing. I was in the museum in Cleveland, and sometimes I used to have myself photographed with this guy. And he was another early character. I found out that Egyptian names were sometimes spelled one way or the other way. Who knows how they were pronounced? I get into that in the part I'm going to read too. That they could be read either way and often contain puns. But one of the early names that I had was Kafusar. So Kafusar reversed is Usarkaf. And he was actually around at the time when my story was being written. So I just kind of threw him in there too and added his story and found out that he was one of the names in that papyrus that had Jedi and Horjatef and all those people in it. So I said, okay, I'll go with that too. So it flowed together. It really did. And it just kind of like it was almost, I'm finding secret unwritten texts, you know. Like they talk about, like, say, if I may say so, the hidden books of the Bible. Okay, well, this is the hidden myths of Egypt, you know.
I like that connection. Let's see. Oh, you know what else I wanted to ask you about? You had this really cool Facebook post on your page a little while back where you were showing your necklace and how you connected that to all of your covers. Did you want to get more into the like symbolism of that?
Yeah, it is. This one. All right, let me get it. Let me keep it. My son actually gave me this thing. Do we see it good enough here?
A little bit, yeah. When you move it, you can see the texture a little bit. Ooh, it almost focused for a second. It's so pretty. I know. Oh, there it is. Oh, gorgeous.
Okay. That's called the flower of life, and there's a lot of New Age stuff about this thing. We have talks in ancient literature about wheels, like Ezekiel saw the wheel, and about wheels that turn. And this new thing coming out, Wheel of Time. And I understand there was also in the series Lost, although I didn't see it that far, there was a wheel in that thing too. But one of the ancient symbols is of a center, which is, say, the center of the pattern. And it comes under the heading, I guess, of sacred geometry. Now, never ask me about mathematics or geometry. That's very embarrassing to me. One of the reasons I went into art was because I was a complete dud with that sort of stuff.
Oh,
Oh yes, I was. I never got past Algebra 1 in high school because I argued too much. I don't accept theorems and facts. I had to know why. I irritated the teachers so much they just kind of, yeah, go away.
oh no.
You know,
I think
don't
that's
come
the
back.
author in you, though. That's kind of cool. That's you're researching. You were already researching. You had to know why.
Right. So I didn't want to take facts, but they said there are 19 circles if you keep that are superimposed, and they grow and they grow. So everybody's seen a Venn diagram, right? So this is like a large pattern of Venn diagram. So if you can imagine a cell, all cells come from a center. And in the ancient Egyptians and a lot of the ancient people were very, very focused on patterns in stars, patterns in what they saw. Like if they opened a shell, they would see the Nautilus spiral. They could see how it looked in a rose. If they'd seen a rose, how they have that spiral in the top. And then you could see a starburst, and it had things coming from the center. And so to them, that suggested that things of the gods are in the center and everything radiates from it. It's in all of us. We are all at different parts on this wheel. And it's this flower. And some people actually had a theory. I don't know where this is, but I've seen it. You still have me? It said the connection's kind of.
Oh, yep. I haven't lost you. I'm sorry. Yep.
Am I back?
Yep.
Back. Okay. See now, where was I? That distracted me.
Sorry. It's coming from the outside, and we're all
okay. There are some theories that say if you have 3 of these flower of life patterns superimposed and turning at different rates, you can open a time bending portal. or a wormhole. And so I kind of went, "Oh, I'll throw that in my book too." So we'll do that too. So really what I do is I'm a pantser, but if I find something really cool that I can use, I'll go, all right, in it goes,
I love that you kind of have room for that inspiration as it hits you to add in, and it still works. I think that's
And
beautiful.
sometimes I've had to go back and rewrite it because I didn't, I should have mentioned it earlier. And then all of a sudden, my writing group that I was in before COVID shut it all down was like, where did this come from? Oh, all right. Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned that before.
Oh, that is tough, I guess, if you add something along the way. A lot of writing, I feel like there is foreshadowing that leads up to that. Probably does make it tough when you're inspired by something along the way because you've been writing the series for so long, like adding to it, and you're still getting that last one. Does that happen a lot to you where you are now? Do you have anything you?
Yeah, I had like the timeline. The big one I've got right now is that we have a 70-day period. It's a spoiler to say why there's a 70-day period, but I have way too much going on, present travel, even past travel capabilities, notwithstanding, for that to all happen in 70 days. And so that was the latest one I handed my son. How can we do this? And I think he's just sort of like saying, maybe they won't notice. Maybe it can take longer and they won't notice, But sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes I pick it up in the revision, because I have revised the first two.
I did notice that in the beginning of your book, you do mention right towards the beginning, before we're getting into reading the first chapter, that it's a revised version. So did you put a lot of revisions into that, or was it just a few little changes?
Well, mostly what I did with the first book was I cleaned up a lot of the typos and a lot of the grammar problems. That and a lot of the POVs. I was a terrible POV person. I still fight with it sometimes because I was writing, like the style I first wrote in was very Dickensian, lots of purple prose and description heavy stuff, and just going on and on and on and on and on, like a 19th century novel, which people don't have the patience for nowadays. I mean, if they've got nothing to do with their lives except read beautiful descriptions, they can do this, but most don't.
It is
and
tough.
not only that, they'll put it down.
I love like the Lord of the Rings movies, but I cannot read the books, and it makes me so sad because it just it has a lot of description.
Or my favorite, Moby Dick, where they're having an entire 30-page chapter about the treatment of the blubber, and I'm going, okay. All right.
And that leads me to another question I have for you, because I love the way your book is set up. It's such a different format than I've seen in a while. So you've got, a lot of extras in the beginning. You've got your beautiful dedication and your beautiful author's note. And then you've got it broken down. Your book is in 4 parts. And then within you've got 39 chapters. And each chapter has a name. And then in the back, we know you have your pronunciation guide, glossary, you've got a map. It's a really cool format, actually. What led you to format your book that way? That looks like it was a lot of time and effort just even putting into formatting.
His name is Tom. No, I just said we just have to put that in there, and he kind of formatted it. Now, what I did, the part that's me, was the italics. You'll run across that. Non-spoken words or spirit words or thoughts are always italics. And so that's tough when you're reading aloud, because you can't tell if you're just reading from a script what's thought and what's spoken. So what I did with that was the children's voices or the poems are written in center space, verse, And the spoken thoughts or the thoughts that the characters have are in italics in the text. Sometimes in some of the printings, it's from some of the anthologies that's gotten totally bollocksed. And it's going, oh, they didn't do it right, but that's just how we decided it. I also decided that things I told you earlier to do 1.5 spacing rather than single spacing, because although my eyes are fine with vision, I get tired. Maybe it's the ADHD of when I just see a wall of words, my eyes just kind of start, and I don't remember a thing I read. So I figured to have the center space stuff and the different formats would keep people's attention a little better. So it's a visual thing.
I like the thought that went into that. That's really neat. And yeah, it even comes through in the ebook, because right now I'm starting off reading your book as the ebook version, and it breaks it up nicely so you can keep up what's going on. I like that. Oh, and I did want to bring up, you had a post that you shared on our Facebook group on Friday with some really good information. And we do have some book club members that only follow us on YouTube. So there were a couple things I wanted to bring up. You mentioned your characters have either real or historical names that would have fit in ancient Middle East, which you brought up. And there was another, you mentioned trigger warnings, which I wanted to say, I really appreciate an author who has a story to tell, but then also on the other hand, considers a reader. Like, I love that you put it out there that you feel like there are trigger warnings you want people to be aware of. I think that's a really special thing that you have that balance to let people know in advance.
I'm kind of against them, but I realize nowadays that they're not possibly going to give somebody a stress attack, but they are going to turn somebody off enough to where they'll just close the book and go, I can't do this,
I think I really appreciate too that you put it out there in advance. People can still read and brace themselves if it's something that might bother them. But I think it's easier to take when you know in advance sometimes too. Like if it is something that might bother you, for me, I really appreciate when an author says in advance, I thought of you as a reader, just in case, just know this up front. And you're writing in a time period where these kinds of triggers, it sounds like, would have just been way of life. Why you felt it was important to put it in, basically, to make sure that it's staying true to life in that time period?
Right. Because I actually had a discussion with a group with someone like that, going like, well, you have all this violence and you're writing fantasy. Can't you make it nicer? And I'm going, well, I could, but that's not my story. My story has people that are poor, people that are cruel, people that are rich, people that take advantage, people that don't regard human life worth two diddlies, and they act accordingly. You have them in the world today, and they end up on the news. We're seeing a lot of that in the Middle East today that you're going to run across in my book that has not changed for 5,000 years. A lot of the people are complaining about since we've gotten out of Afghanistan, that hasn't changed much.
I definitely respect that you're doing it that way, that you want to have your historical side and your fantasy side. And we've talked about books in the book club before, like there are so many different ways where people incorporate, like scenes in their book that make it realistic. And unfortunately, in reality, sometimes it's not perfect. So I wanted to say, I really appreciate you putting that out there and doing what you do with it. So I think that's fantastic. So I've got a couple more questions for you because I feel like I had a ton. So I appreciate you bearing with me. Hopefully,
I'm fine.
Okay. I didn't ask you your favorite song because I do have an event coming up on Wednesday where you're going to say your favorite song with Valerie Taylor, because we're making a book club hosted by Heather Skinner playlist.
Well, I have a lot of favorite songs, so I just had to pick one.
It's hard to choose, right? I'm kind of doing that too still. Like, how do I pick one? But I do notice that, you put song in your book a lot. Is there like a symbolism with song that you identify with that you'd like to tell us about, like with your writing?
One of the things that really came through to me was something I heard in church. I think it's biblical, about, I'd have to actually look it up to see if it was biblical or if it was literal, a literary thing. It said, he who sings praise twice, you know. So in other words, the song is important. Song is also something that can go throughout the universe. People, there are tunes. I think people have noticed that even in the darkness of space, sometimes there'll be tone variations. Is that song? You know, and there's some reason. Why do people sing? They sing because they want to give meaning to something, whether it sounds good or not. I mean, why do we have melodies? Why do we have music? And it's to give our words extra meaning. And in a way, it is like praying, And so that's why I begin the very first with our main character is singing his heart out to his goddess,
I love that. And especially after reading the first chapter already and seeing the songs that you have in there, I love hearing that extra connection behind adding extra to it.
I changed the words on hymn to Inanna is what I did. So you might, it's not plagiarized exactly, but
Your own spin on it.
right. Well, I mean, he has his own goddess too, because it's a combination goddess of Ashera and Inanna, which is a Canaanite and Akkadian fertility goddess. Kind of like kind of a mother goddess, but also a warrior and everything. Kind of, there's if you could imagine a combination of Athena and Diana, if you take the Greek, she had the fertility and the no, excuse me, not Diana, Venus and Hera. She had the fertility and the soft and wiggly component, but she also had the warlike and no nonsense component. And that's what he worshiped,
I love that. And I love your association with Greek mythology too. I love Greek mythology. So I wanted to
You and my eldest grandson would get along. He will tell you all of them.
I love them. I'm still like always researching because there's so many different stories out there too, even on like different spins to each one. I find them all so fascinating. But I think you have that with what you've researched too, it sounds like too. So, I mean, there's a lot of different spins and like goddesses and stuff to research. So I find that all very fascinating for different cultures. It's really neat. I wanted to share on your Facebook page, you've started something, your share project, I think you're calling it. And I wanted to talk about that for people who join your Facebook group. How does that work?
Well, and I put up, now I've sent you some of these and hopefully they'll get posted on my different days for different chapters, snippets and excerpts from each chapter. I started with book 1. I'm about halfway through book 2 right now. And that's my way of promo, is I put a little under 100 word snippet and a photograph that sort of works on there as my ads. And so what I want people to do is not just hit like, I want them to share it somewhere. It doesn't have to be their page. It can be their favorite reader page. Now, you might have some groups that won't like that and will tell you you can't do that, but I'm sure everybody has at least one place they can share it to. And so I can see in the corner if it's been shared or not, and then I give a person a point. Now I still will give, like if a person goes like about 5 times, I can be about 1 share point, because some people don't feel very comfortable just sharing it to random sites. Well, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is if you do it too often, you'll end up in Facebook jail. But you learn those sites. You learn who, but usually the moderator will say, don't put that here. And then, you can't share it to that site. But at some point, maybe by the end of the year, I will gift them with their choice of paperback of one of my paperbacks. I'm saying book one, but if they already have it in paperback and want another one, want a different one, they can have book two, which is, I had that out here. Book two. Okay. I have 4 books in print, and I was hoping by December I would have the 5th, but that's not happening.
I appreciate even if it goes over though, because that is a lot of, so much that you're finishing up and putting into. So I think readers will understand. And then you're at a point too where once everything's out, I know like me, I hate waiting for the next one. Like I love to know what happens next. I get so excited and wrapped up in a series. So I think
that's why I started revising too. That's why I started revising. So there would still be something new out of Children of Stone each year. And so some of the mini books are spinoffs with characters. There's one I hope to have done that came from that Femme Fatale book, which is called Miss Hattie and the Hoppers, which is 2 of my characters who actually hate each other's guts in the series. Are now time traveling together, and it's almost like Bill and Ted do steampunk in East Tennessee in the 1870s. So that ended up, I just do all kinds of weird stuff like that.
I love that. And can you please show us too? I think you have them handy, all of your mini stories, and which ones connect again. And then
Okay.
I know you mentioned just so everybody gets another look at where else they can find you. And you said you're in Kaleidoscope Part 3 with a short story.
Well, let me get those other pictures. Let me get the other books. Hang on.
Okay. And that way we can keep track of where she is, because I know we do have some quick readers, or maybe even readers that, maybe want to read her short stories this month. I would love to see reviews from anything you pick up. She's got so many works out there. I've read Anna's Dream of Flying, and I've given her a review. I should post that, actually. I will remind myself to post my review there.
Got my stack now. Okay. I just saw this was in order here. Number 1. Okay.
Cool.
Number 2.
Oh, okay. I got a little bit of glare on that one. Do you think you could move it just a little? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That's also one of my son's cover. I love this cover.
That's beautiful.
I love this one to death. This cover will be redesigned, but it's still a nice cover. This is book 3.
Ooh, I love it. I bet you Gemma would have lots of questions about that one too. I can tell. I feel like that would really ignite her on that one. That's pretty.
Point is, this book doesn't take place in Egypt.
Oh.
So I've got to do something, and it doesn't have the Flower of Life on it. But this was one of the only commercial one that I liked. But I still got to do it. And this is book 4.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was Tom's first cover, actually.
It's gorgeous.
Okay. Now this is the one that has the steampunk and one of my son's stories in it.
I think that's fantastic that you're published in one short story collection together. I just love that.
And this is the first anthology. It's called Dreamtime Dragons.
Oh, nice.
You buy this one, and all funds go to support rehoming ferrets in England. There's a ferret shelter rescue service. And so this one has Anna in it, but it also, all the stories have dragons.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So if anybody likes dragons, they can read Anna plus a whole lot of other dragon stories.
Is there a specific website that we have to go to purchase it that way for the
they're all on Amazon under my name.
Okay.
It's just that they get when it's an anthology, the funds go where they go. They don't go to me. Okay. This one is Ghostly Youth. Okay. And that one, I haven't done the mini book, but it has a story in it that deals with Roman ghostly spirits. It deals with Lares and the house guardian spirits. And it's a YA. And the reason this is Ghostly Youth is we had some young authors in here too. So they had to be all about YA level. So that was another. I'll do these anthologies sometimes just on challenge. Like I haven't written one of these before. Let me try to write that. Okay.
I like that. I like
and here's Kaleidoscope Hearts. These are all romance. Most of them are clean. I mean, one's got erotica in it, but generally most of them. In mine is about a woman who is running away from her life, and she has that typical lost on the highway type thing. And the guy who comes, she meets the guy that leads her to a small hick town in Virginia that's not a usual town. And so the story unfolds from there. So it's paranormal romance.
Ooh.
You know.
And did you say what the title of your short story is in there?
The Figment. It's called The Figment. Okay. Yeah, the other one, that one with the Lares and Panakas, that's called The Green Cabinet Door. And that was actually inspired by some green cabinet doors I had in my old house. There is another one that I don't have a print copy of, but it's available on Amazon. And it's my first foray into horror. I wrote that last year. And but it also deals with Greek myths. It's called Night Route. And it's about a bus driver that's about to retire, and then something happens. He sees a terrible wreck and things change from there. That one's to come out next, actually. I'm hoping after my son gets back from his journey that as long as he hasn't half killed himself, that he'll have time to format that when we can get it out there, because I've already got the cover. These are the 3 mini books that I have. That Night Route will also be one. First one is Anna. Okay. And that's a African-American girl in the 1960s in the segregated South and her dreams. Okay. And friends that may be imaginary, maybe they're not, you know. Okay. And this one is Ramakai Stairs, and it's basically the story of a ghost trapped in a stairwell and how he gets free. And he's actually a little more than a ghost. He's kind of, well, I'm not going to be a spoiler. Okay. And then this one actually turned out to be my most popular one. Okay. And it's Changeling Princess. And everybody remembers the story of Snow White. But this one is a different Snow White. Girl awakes from a coma that she's been in for a couple of years and has this distinct impression she does not belong in this world. Certainly not in the hospital in Denver, Colorado. She belongs in a fantasy kingdom, you know, and it's her struggle to get back there. And as far as 7 dwarfs, so we have only 1 dwarf. And she's a warrior dwarf. And so I wrote that one for my granddaughter who does have dwarfism. So, and you know, she inspired that because she was coming to terms with a little bit of that when she was about 4 and a half, realized she was not going to get tall. So I said, well, you know, dwarfs can fly. And so I wrote, this dwarf can fly, you know, and she moves out.
That is fantastic. I want to read everything. And that brings me to another point we wanted to talk about. So because you do have so many like mini books people could read this month, or just reading book 1, you're a little under 500 pages, right? When we take out the glossary and map.
About 423 is the last title heading.
Okay. So what we want to do, because September is a very like busy month for a lot of people, school season's coming back. And there is a lot to read. We're thinking of doing 2 months for Mary's book, or for reading her works. Like, I would love to see, if people aren't reading Voices in Crystal, maybe if they're reading the short stories, posting reviews. I would love to see, because you have so many great works out there, and I know I would love to
Well,
read a
thank
bunch of
you.
them. Yeah, I can't wait to read as much as I can. So I think we're going to do this for September and October, because you do have 39 chapters too, right? So that we can get to as many of the chapters
39 plus an epilogue.
as an epilogue.
Epilogue was kind of like my son's idea, because chapter 3 has a character that's a cameo. And since you've read up to chapter 5, you already know who I'm talking about. It's that little boy. But he doesn't come back until book 3. So my son thought, but we need to put an epilogue in there that at least kind of reminds people that this wasn't just some flyby character that never appears again. You know, it goes on, you know.
So that's fantastic. Yeah, I want to make sure.
9 plus epilogue.
Okay. Yeah, because the way we would do it with my normal format, if we're only doing, the chapter discussion starting when we are, I don't think we'd even really get to the point where we'd be talking about the main plot, that you want to get to. So I want to make sure we can feature your book properly with the amount of chapters. So I'm thinking we're looking into, if not halfway into October, with a break, or, extra time for voting into the next book. Then all the way through, depending on, we'll play it by ear so that we can make sure we get everything in for you. So I just wanted to let you members know,
And it'll give me more time to write too.
Yay, that's right. Are you writing more fairy tale retellings?
There was a whole bunch of people told me do Hansel and Gretel, but I can't come up with, oh, that'd be nice, but it all ends up with cannibalism, and I'm going,
Okay.
I'm going, no.
That you were like talking about different ones that you could do, what people would want to see, and I did see Hansel and Gretel.
Well, like Little Red Riding has been overdone, so is Beauty and the Beast. I mean, every single shifter romance is Beauty and the Beast, if you look at it that way, Little Red Riding Hood is still basically Beauty and the Beast, but it has to do with a girl lost in the woods, and I'm kind of like, I didn't want to do either one of those. Snow White I hadn't seen before. Sleeping Beauty was actually one of my favorite movies when I was little, but the idea is not coming that's anywhere. What you want to do when you're redoing a fairy tale is you want to do one that every person hasn't already done. And I hadn't seen Hansel and Gretel, but I'm not getting good ideas on what I can do with that yet. I didn't say I gave up. I'm saying yet. I've also had a call to do Baba Yaga, but I would have to reread it. I read parts of that to my kids when they were growing up. And everybody knows about the House on Chicken Legs, but there's a whole bunch of Baba Yaga stories. So I'd have to pick one, because there's a flying kettle in there somewhere too.
That's fantastic.
Sure. I'm going to try that. The one that I'm working on right now is probably more of a paranormal romance. I just thought of the idea yesterday. It's called Rich Are the Rooms, and it's for this year's Ghostly Rites. And it's a woman that has kind of a shadowy figure for a husband that nobody's ever really seen, And so is he a vampire? They've heard him talking in the backyard where it's nice and shady, but nobody's ever seen him,
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know exactly what I'm doing with that thing, but there it is.
You've got a lot going on to work on too. So I'm interested to see what people will read this month, if they will break down and do the short stories, or if they're going to start with your Voices in Crystal series. We do have some fast readers, so we'll see, where some get
I'd like them to start with Voices in Crystal first, mostly because that's what's going to get discussed, I would guess, first.
It sounds like you're working on a giveaway too for our book club group. and you want to base it on participation, kind of like an author takeover, right? For while we're discussing.
Right.
So did you want to tell the members a little bit more about that? So just continuing with participating in the discussions while we're featuring your book?
Right. When you see a post, make sure that, well, one thing you could do is you could share it to your page. Go, here's the book we're reading in book club. And, and then maybe put the links up. So in other words, they can advertise for me by putting it on their own page. And then they can answer the question or stuff like that. And put that, and that'll be put up there too.
All right. So thank you so much. This interview's been awesome.
Okay.
And I'm so excited to read everything. This is great.